If you're about to buy a Sony FX3, hold your horses because there might be a cheaper way to get one. This is the Sony ZV-E1, and at $2199, it's nearly half the price of the FX3. This full-frame upgrade from the vlogger focused ZV-1 has the same dynamic range, the same astounding ISO range, the same pixel count, and the same BioNZXR processor. They might even have the same full-frame sensor as well. So, is this prosumer model as powerful as the cinema-focused FX3? Let's find out. Physically, these cameras are very different. The ZV-E1 is what we've come to expect from a traditional photocentric style camera, whereas the rugged body of the FX3 with its quarter-20 mounting points and XLR top handle distinctly make it a cinema camera. The FX3 is certainly designed to be more robust, but if these are the same underneath, is that enough to double the cost? I shoot with the FX3 pretty regularly, so I took the ZV-E1 out to see if I could get similar results. And of course, the only place to do a street photography review of a consumer camera is shooters choose England as their review destination of choice for its overcast skies, its detailed architecture, and its smiling populace. But seriously, this is a great camera for the Sony shooter on the go. It has nowhere near the same amount of buttons or accessibility as the FX3, it probably wouldn't survive a drop as well, or could be rigged out as easily. But for street photography, it's got everything you need and nothing you don't.
I know plenty of shooters go on vacation, they have beautiful camera rigs at home, but they don't want to bring them. Can't pack them, can't rig them. The family is always asking what's taking so long for a photo or something like that. This is your answer right here.
One of the best features for me is the ability to flip between stills, video, and slow-mo with the flip of a switch. I do a lot of vlogging where I'm talking to camera and then quickly need to get some slow-mo B-roll to tell the story. My GH6 has been great for that, but the ZV-E1 is even faster. The whole layout is really geared towards handheld shooting with minimal gear. There's even a digital zoom rocker so you can shoot with a prime lens and still have a little bit of flexibility in framing. Clearly, you can see that this camera is born from vlogging roots. Out and about, this camera is great. The image is crisp and smooth, and the camera has great low-light performance. It really feels like Sony has taken all the R&D that went into the FX3 and shoved it into a smaller, simpler body. Now, this is not a revolutionary thing to do, and when this does happen, one problem usually rears its ugly head: overheating. Around London at Christmas time, I experienced no overheating issues, but that's hardly a fair test, so let's see if we can't find a warmer climate. Under the hot UV rays of the South African sun, the ZV-E1 held up absolutely fine. In a 20-minute handheld interview at the top of Table Mountain, this camera had zero issues. However, friend of hot rod cameras Ben Rock used this same body right after me, and he did run into overheating issues when recording for an hour or longer. This seems to be the risk that you run with these prosumer bodies, as they're not designed to reject as much heat as a cinema camera body is. Which makes sense for a full-frame sensor shoved into a body that was originally designed for a 1-inch sensor. Audio-wise, the ZV-E1 is very lacking. It doesn't come with the XLR top handle of the FX3. Instead, you get this little dinky windsock, which doesn't perform up to standards.
Of course, this is probably too extreme of a situation for this little windsock. And for this lens, quite honestly.
The other feature you'd likely find yourself using on a vacation is autofocus. And the ZV-E1 is about a 7 out of 10. It definitely feels more hesitant and unsure than the FX3, but most of what I shoot with the FX3 is more of a structured environment with different lenses. The face tracker does seem to track faces. The animal tracker does seem to track animals. However, when you're on a long shot, it does want to readjust and find that face again, even if there are no other faces to distract it. But with those minor headaches aside, the real question is this sensor the same as the FX3? So I set up a little non-scientific test with the FX3, the ZV-E1, and an A7 III as a neutral comparison. I did mention that this was a less than scientific test, and on the ZV-E1 you can really see the color cast from the fact that this is using a different lens than what's on the FX3. However, when we bring the A7 III into the mix, you can really see how similar the FX3 and ZV-E1 really are in contrast and in color. The dynamic range and clarity all really seem to be similar, to the point where I have to assume that this is in fact the same sensor between the ZV-E1 and the FX3. And if they're not, they're really darn close. While this might be the same sensor as the FX3, that's really only half the equation. The FX3 is a user's choice because of its usability. The VZE1 is not geared towards a cinema environment, so you really have to think about what kind of shooter you are, and what kind of shooting your projects call for. If, however, you are already an FX3 owner, or maybe the owner of an FX6 who was looking at an FX3 as a B camera, the VZE1 might be something easy to throw into your kit instead. You can use the same lenses, you can record in the same settings, and if you do the update, you can record in 4K 120. If you are the kind of person who finds yourself both shooter and subject, the FX3 is not for you. The VZE1 is the way to get that image without having to hold a cinema camera at arm's length for selfies. If you want to take a look at the VZE1 or the FX3 for yourself, you can check them both out at hotrodcameras.com. Or you can come and visit us in store in Burbank, California.